What's up, everybody? You are looking live. This is another live edition of the Rick Mast Show. I'm Charlie Marlow. That is the great Rick Mast. Rick, how are you doing, sir? And let me tell you, man, what a week to do a show. There is so much NASCAR news going on these days. How you doing?
Charlie, I'm doing well, man. Got a little bit of the croup, got a little cough going on. Other than that, pretty good. Went honky tonking over the weekend with my family and friends. That may have been what brought on the croup I've got here, the cough. I'm not sure. But anyhow, here's the topic. Here's the topic, Charlie. This is the topic. It's called risk versus reward, right? And I don't know that there's a professional sport that risk versus reward is as prominent as it is in NASCAR or auto racing in general, right? And we know from it as a driver, if you're driving, the risk versus reward, we know what that means. You're running along there in the pack, and you're thinking, I can get in that hole right there, like at Daytona or Talladega drafted. If I get in that hole, I'm going to be good. If I don't get it in the hole, man, I'm going to go back. I'm going back to the rear, right? But if I try to get in the hole and the hole's not open, I take a chance on wrecking and hurting myself or getting carried out of the racetrack in a meat wagon, right? It's always been that way. And in different racetracks, as a driver, you're always weighing that risk versus reward, okay? And the risk of these things as a driver can be catastrophic, and it's always been that way in our sport. Now we go to the crew chief side, right? Risk versus reward. Do I put 4 tires on and go back in the pack and try to get maybe there's 4 tires? I outrun guys that put 2 tires, or if it doesn't work, then man, we're going to finish 20th, right? If it works, maybe we could win the race, right? Other professional sports, I guess. What is it? Football would be 4. You go for it on fourth and 1, right?
Mm-hmm.
If you miss it, then the other team gets the ball. Well, man, in racing, if you as a driver, if you miss it, you could get hurt, right? And that's what makes it exciting. One of the things that makes it exciting. But then a crew chief, do a gamble on the fuel, do a risk versus reward. It's so many things, man, in racing. And then, Charlie, we get to a weight deal, a weight with my car. My car is going to weigh 3,425 pounds if my driver is Alex Bowman. When it goes across the scales, start the race, it's going to weigh 3,425 when the race is over, minus 0.5%. The 0.5% was 17 pounds. Okay, 1%'s 34 pounds. Yeah. So these guys, and as we saw, they kept rolling it across the scales. They filled it up with gas. They filled it up with water. They did all that, rolled it across the scales 2 or 3 times. It never made weight. All right. So obviously the thing was light. Right now, that brings in the question: how the hell did this happen? How did we do this? Is this a risk versus reward call from the crew chief or engineer or whoever's in charge of this deal? It's unfathomable. It's hard for me to believe, Charlie, that the crew chief did a risk versus reward thing on this weight. It's just hard for me to believe. It's hard for me to believe that this was purposely done, because you've got to make the weight after the race. As we know, NASCAR has gotten so, gosh, how they're so black and white and so sticky on these rules anymore in the post-race inspections that everybody knows that you just don't do this. You don't come across the scales weight. I have to believe one of 2 things. I truly believe in my heart one of 2 things. Something fell off the car, or it was an honest mistake. If it fell off the car, though, here's the problem, Charlie. If it fell off the car, they would appeal.
Mm-hmm.
Hendrick would have appealed this decision because they proved that something, when he went over that big hump and went way up in the air and come slamming down, something broke or fell off the car. By them not appealing the decision, that tells me that, yep, we knew it was light. We're the reason that it's light, okay? And there's nothing we can do about it, because they'd have fought it tooth and nail if they had any leg to stand on. So that begs the question again: is this a risk versus reward situation, or the guys, they just flat screwed up with the deal? Okay, but then it brings into question: well, how did it make weight before the race, right?
Mm-hmm.
So there's questions here, Charlie, that maybe we'll get to the bottom of it at some point. But the bottom line is, man, Alex Bowman got kicked out of the chase. I mean, you realize how big that is? That's a big deal. That's a black mark, dude. It's a black mark on those guys, and they know that, right? And the ramifications for this happening is astronomical to the team and to the sponsors and everything they're trying to do. The good news in all this is, Hendrick by not appealing, Hendrick Motorsports owned up to the fact that, we screwed up, right? The reasons why that happened, we don't know what that is. But as a racer man, and me and my mindset, I'm sitting here thinking risk versus reward on this. The risk is not worth the reward of having your car light when that race is over on purpose. That's my take on it right now. And that's the way it's going to stay until somebody changes my mind.
Okay, we're putting a lot of comments and questions across the ticker there. A lot of people weighing in. So obviously Alex Bowman DQ'd Sunday night after the race. Yesterday it's announced that Hendrick Motorsports will not appeal. And you heard everybody on Sunday discussing this. It was, I believe, Brad Moran from NASCAR.
Yes.
He did a quick little media availability, and he let everybody know. And I think a lot of people knew this, but you have a 0.5% buffer, essentially, which is 17 pounds.
Right.
So you tell me, do most of these teams, do they try to keep it light enough so that it's dang close to 17 pounds to get that advantage? And then I'm thinking, I mean, if it's over by a pound or two, even of the 17 pounds, right? It looks like they gave Hendrick every opportunity by running the water through, by running the fuel through, multiple times weighing it. I mean, do you think it was egregious? Was it not just 17 pounds? Was it even more than that? You think that it got to this point where he's DQ'd?
Oh, yeah, it's definitely more than 17. You give 17. If they give me 0.5%, I'm going to take 0.999 of that 0.5%. My car is going to be 16 pounds light. Okay. I mean, I'm going to have 1 pound over, but I'm going to be dead on it. And the way these teams are now with the resources we have, you can get it within a pound. You can get it within half a pound, probably, or I know you can. And, so they give you that, so you take it, So if you're going to be over 17, man, you've made a mistake somehow. You've made a mistake somewhere. But yeah, all the teams are going to they're going to use everything they'll give them. Yes, Charlie.
So, okay. So I need to ask this in a better way.
Okay.
At 18 pounds, let's say it was 18 pounds. Are they DQing him for 18? They are. Okay.
Yes.
Okay.
Because you're given 17 to start with. You
Right.
should be 34.25, but we're going to give you 0.5% just for shits and giggles, right?
Sure.
And, so that's 17 pounds. And if you're 18, you're really 18. You're not really 1 pound over or under. You're really 18 pounds under.
Right.
So, yeah, they're going to bust you at 18. So, I don't know where it's at. I don't know what the poundage is. If it's 1 pound, if it's 1 pound, 18 pounds. It's not 1 pound. It's 18 pounds. You
right.
Can't, you can't hardly appeal that. So yeah. To answer your question, yeah.
And you said you don't. So you think there's any chance that this was done on purpose? And I guess that matters. But what do you think will be the ramifications of this? Is this such a big deal? Because clearly Alex Bowman, who is going to be in the round of 8, now he's DQ'd. And look, there was a lot of talk about his seat before this. Like there were some rumors. He addressed them at NASCAR Playoffs Media Day about Kyle Busch. You got to think that at Hendrick, of the 4 drivers, his seat is probably the hottest in terms of performance wise. So in your opinion, any chance this was on purpose? And what do you think will be the ramifications? Does somebody get fired for this? What do you think?
I don't know, Charlie. That's why I went into the rant about risk versus reward. It's hard for me to say that the crew chief is going to risk versus reward 18 pounds on this deal and not make it into the chase. I have big time trouble believing that went on purpose.
Mhm.
I do. I mean, just because you're going to get weighed after the race, you know, you know, I just don't. I just have trouble believing that. Not saying it didn't happen yet. Could have happened. We go back to that risk versus reward again. But I just have trouble believing this was done on purpose. You know. Now, to your point about Alex Bowman, in my mind, what this does, it it gives Alex Bowman more security because Hendrick Motorsports let Alex Bowman down.
Mhm.
This guy did what he had to do. He got in this chase by winning. You winning the race, wherever that was at road course or whatever it was, and he
Chicago.
did. Yeah, he did his. He's driven his ass off the last few weeks. That car, they've been running good the last few weeks.
Mhm.
He's had to withstand all these rumors about not being in the race car, although Hendrick and Gordon and everybody says that's all baloney. Well, if there was a little bit of something going on with that, by Hendrick Motorsports letting Alex Bowman down in this deal, I think solidifies his place within that organization. How are you going to now? You've had a driver that gets your car into the chase, right? Gets you into the next round, and you as an organization let him down. We can't go into the chase because we screwed up. You didn't screw up as a driver. We screwed up. We kept your name out of the chase. We kept your name out of the and all this stuff. They got the TV deal going on in the backgrounds right now with these guys. All the stuff that's happening, all the media, all the attention you're going to get for the next few weeks being in this deal. He's not in it anymore. Alex Bowman's name is not going to be in it. The only thing you're going to be talking about for the next three races, Alex Bowman was in the championship, but they were caught. They were caught light, right? They got kicked out. So in my mind, I mean, again, if you're Hendrick, how do you let Alex Bowman go after this happened to him? I just don't. I didn't believe that to be true to start with. With all the rumors, and to me, this just solidifies his position within Hendrick Motorsports.
No, that's a good take. I didn't
Does that
think
make
about it.
sense?
No,
Yeah.
it makes total sense.
Yeah.
It would be really tough. First of all, I believe, and somebody can correct me, I believe he's under contract for at least another year. So that was part of this story. But it is interesting. How do you get rid of a guy now who should have been in the final 8 if it really wasn't his fault? That
Right.
would be pretty dirty.
Right.
Obviously, Alex Bowman didn't know what was going on with the weight of the car, I would think. I mean, there's no way.
And neither did Rick Hendrick and Jeff Gordon, by the way.
Right.
For all the fans out there, those guys, no, they wouldn't have known it. If they'd have known that, they'd have made sure the thing was heavy enough. But no, they didn't. They before it even starts. So it's already started, okay, on social media. But no, they didn't know.
And my guy Brian Lekorchik, 9696, he says they failed Alex for sure. And I got to mention Brian here. He said he's from Perrysburg, Ohio. That's about 20 minutes, 25 minutes where I'm from in Toledo. That's the home of Jim Leland, the Hall of Fame manager, Jim Leland.
Cigarette
Just a little fun
Jim
fact.
Leland. He loves cigarettes, didn't he?
Yes, he does. Wearing spikes in the dugout,
yes.
Smoking cigarettes during the game. Love it. Okay, so Rick, we'll change topics. There's honestly so much to talk about. A lot of drama. So we mentioned Alex Bowman, the DQ. Hendrick does not appeal. Yesterday, we have this AP story from Jenna Fryer. I'll read you the headline. NASCAR aware of allegations a team engineer stole intellectual property to give to a rival team. And in the article, it basically says the engineer is in a contract year with Joe Gibbs Racing, according to executives with 6 teams who spoke with the AP on condition of anonymity because the details are considered private and have not been disclosed publicly. Joe Gibbs Racing, which has 2 cars still competing for the Cup title, declined to comment. So we're talking about here proprietary information. And you always hear stories from back in the day. I want to hear from you. Back in your day, maybe there were some guys who were helping each other out, helping teams out with chassis setup and all that. But now this is a billion-dollar industry with NASCAR. These are teams that are worth multi-million dollars. These charters are worth whatever it is, $40 million. This is a no-no. So this is a pretty big deal when you're sharing info with another team, even if it's a team that's not in the playoffs here. What do you think?
Charlie? If we go back, man, this is a big deal. But I mean, when I first read about it and I looked at it, I'm like, yeah, ain't no big deal. Hell, this stuff goes on all the time, right? And it used to go on all the time, folks. This crap went on all the time. You would steal a crew member to get the information. This has always gone on. But in those days when it was going on, I mean, the guy would change teams. Or really, I'm going to tell you something. A lot of what used to go on this kind of stuff, all these guys know each other, and a lot of them are buddies. They'd go out partying. They'd be at the racetrack, and they'd go out partying on a Friday or Saturday night. And everybody get to having a good time and drinking. And, it would be a crew member or whoever with a team, and that team is kicking butt, and he'd maybe get a little bit inebriated, and he'd start running his mouth. He'd start talking. He would give up, what his team was doing. That stuff. And the other teams do this, and other teams would, all right, we can get something out of Mikey there, but we got to give him 3 shots of Fireball and one Jack and Coke, and that's but no more than that. We got to get the information right at that point, and it was it was almost a science with these guys as far as getting information. And guys would be buddies on pit road, and they would just talk, and somebody be down in the dumps and need some help or something, and somebody would, back door, give him a little piece of paper that had some information on it. I mean, I've seen this stuff. I've watched it. I know about it, right? And but Charlie, everything you just said about where we're at with the sport right now, these guys weren't under contract. They weren't under non-disclosure contracts, those types of things. I would assume, and in fact, I know I've heard a lot of these guys that are with these teams are under contract. They can't talk about stuff, right? For fear of under penalty of the law, something. And I'll tell you something about Gibbs. It's remarkable, or it's funny about Gibbs. This comes from Gibbs because I'm gonna tell you something. They're probably, I've always felt they're the most, how can I say this, secret organization or information kept within that organization. And I'm going to tell you something. This goes back when they started that team with Jimmy Maycar. Everybody remembers Jimmy Maycar. He was the first crew chief for Joe Gibbs back in the 90s. He's married to Patty Maycar. Patty's did Jarrett's daughter. But anyhow, Jimmy was very, very, he's a good guy, dear friend of mine, but you couldn't get information out of that boy if you hung him by his toes. He wouldn't, other guys you could be butting around with, and you talk a little bit about chassis or car. Even after I retired, even after I was out of the sport, and I would show up at the racetrack, and I'd go find Jimmy at his truck, and we'd sit there. I mean, I know 2 or 3 times we sat there for an hour longer at the back of the tow rig, just talking, right? Talking about stuff. I would bring up anything about the car, downforce or anything. He tight-lipped. He wouldn't say a word. It was the damnedest thing. He was probably the most tight-lipped guy in the sport that I ever met in my life. And that philosophy, he spread through Joe Gibbs Racing, right? And they're just, you don't get information out of that group. And for this to happen to that group is like, damn, of all groups for this to happen to him, like, man. So but for somebody to do it for financial gains, never knew many people. I knew people would do it. They would do it for career gain. They would go to another team and they would share the information they had. But for somebody to just buy and pay for information from that team, that's not right, Charlie. That is what we call downright dirty. All right. That's just dirty ass politics in our sport. That if you're doing it for monetary gain, no, you need to be kicked out of the sport. You need to be whatever it is you do. Now, the other part of this is I see on social media people it said NASCAR knows about it and aware of it. This ain't NASCAR's deal. People raising hell about NASCAR, and this has nothing to do with NASCAR, right? Because there you get this gets into the, this is not a franchise type deal. These are independent contractors. What goes on between those teams has nothing to do with NASCAR. They have no stats to rule on this. Okay, so they just need to be left out of this conversation totally.
It's funny because you brought up back in the day, maybe getting the guy drunk, getting him a couple shots, and yeah. I want to read a couple paragraphs real quick from this article. So it says, this is Jenna Fryer, AP. The engineer had been exploring options with other teams as the season draws to a close. Multiple team officials told the AP on Sunday, confirming they discussed possible employment. So this guy obviously maybe looking to get a job with a different team. NASCAR acknowledged to AP it has heard that one team with no cars in the playoffs paid the engineer cash in exchange for setup information. So there was money exchanged. And as you were talking, I was kind of laughing because don't you think there's a difference? Like if a couple guys are at a bar and they're like, yeah, we got Vegas coming up. What are you looking at setup wise? They start drinking. Yeah, do this, do that. Right. That's different. That's kind of the good old boys. That's what's always been done. Now, if you're downloading a data file and you're emailing it or passing it along and you're paying money, that feels dirtier. But it's kind of funny because it's like this has always been done, but now you're getting money. And I'm sure it was done in a more technological way than just a couple guys at a bar. Yeah. But at the core, it's kind of what NASCAR has always been about a little bit, right? Yeah. As you said.
Yeah, it is, right? And I mean, you're exactly right, Charlie. I mean, I know, we get into, again, it's like the antitrust thing. We're a few levels above Rick Mast right now on all this stuff and what the ramifications are. But yeah, it's still dude, if you're exploring your options for next year to change and go to another team, that's fine. You do all that. You don't give up intellectual properties of what you're doing. You just don't do that. It's not, but yeah, to the core, it really is. It goes back to kind of what we always did a little bit of what guys have always done, but just not for financial gain, then. Just that's the kicker. For actual cash money, nah. And I don't know why NASCAR even said, yeah, we know about it. I don't even know why they would even comment on it. If it'd been me, NASCAR, I said, no, we don't know what you're talking about, right?
So, car guy here asked a good question. Would the Gibbs setup info work on a Ford and GM? So, a Ford or a Chevy, or would that be Toyota only, you think?
No, it would work. It would work across the board.
Okay.
Because we're talking about the fascia, a little bit of the greenhouse difference in these cars, the body styles, the fascia and the tailpiece, but they're all regulated. They're all so close. Anything you do on one is going to work on the other ones. Now, in the past, probably it wouldn't be that way as much because the aerodynamics, the downforce, the side forces, all the geometric forces of everything you're doing because you're a different manufacturer. Yeah, it maybe would work, but no, that's a good question, and it would work. It'll cross-pollinate across all the platform of all the OEMs.
Okay, let's actually talk about the race for a second, which you did at the beginning. Somebody had a good comment here about Kyle Larson. Let me find it. David said, did Larson win on Sunday? I think that's David saying, hey, there's a lot of drama. Let's talk about the actual race. So yeah. Kyle Larson dominates. And Rick Mast, this gets back to what I said at the last cutoff race. Just the drama of the playoffs and seeing on the left side of the screen who's going to be in, who's out. And then look, even though Kyle Larson won easily, the drama of 25, 30 laps to go, being able to watch Tyler Reddick just chip away, and then finally get ahead points-wise of Joey Logano. You think Joey Logano's out. Obviously, that's changed now with the Alex Bowman DQ, which we already mentioned, but more on this race. I thought it was super exciting. Even though Kyle Larson won easily, watching Tyler Reddick that last 25 laps was captivating to me.
Yeah, and it goes to the setup deal, man, the chase. If we didn't have the chase, God, it would have been a boring-ass race. Because, again, Kyle Larson whipped everybody's ass, right? And he's been doing that more frequently here, by the way, as of late. So, yeah, I mean, again, I caught myself doing the same thing, Charlie. I'm sitting there looking at the left side of the bottom of the screen. I'm looking at the cutoff point, right? And, I was sitting there with a big-time Chase Elliott fan watching this thing. And that guy, I didn't say anything, but I kept watching. This guy kept his eye glued down there to the left part of that screen where Chase Elliott was in the standings the whole time, right? And every time, like one time he was the 9 car, we're talking about him. I'm talking about him because I'm with my buddy that is an Elliott fan, and I was just observing him. And he would, Chase was doing the deal to get his stage points, right? And my buddy was like, well, damn, he's not going to be able to win. We're doing this. And I'm like, yeah, but they're getting stage points. Yeah, but he's not going to win. And then, by doing it the way he did it, they didn't really have a chance shot at winning, but they were trying to make sure they had enough points. And then when he dropped back to 20s, he made that one pit stop and he's way back in the 20s, and he was like 3 points above the cut line. And my buddy's sitting there just, going to pieces because he's only 3 points above the cut line. And I'm explaining, but as all this works out, he'll be good. And as it all ended up, it did work out. But my point being, if you've got a driver and he's in that deal on that left side, if one of your drivers is one of those 8 down in there, you're watching all those guys, you know what I mean? It makes it very exciting for the whole race. This guy, if that hadn't been going on, if that wasn't going on, my guy sitting here, and I know my buddy, he would have been 3/4 drunk by halfway through the race because the race was boring other than Kyle Larson, because he was doing his thing. But by having a chase, by having all that happening, it was a cool ass race, man. It was just a good race all the way back through. Again, where was that at a couple of weeks ago? If we said let's throw Kyle Larson out of it, the rest of the race was real good, right? And
was that Bristol?
Yeah, I believe it was Bristol. That's exactly where it was, Charlie. Bristol's a great race other than Kyle Larson. This was a great race. So, yeah, this is a good case in point. And by having my buddy sitting there and me watching him, interacting with him, I'm like, okay, this chase is a pretty cool deal. This is a pretty cool deal.
Okay, I want to find the standings here, so give me 1 second. But as I was watching, and obviously now Bowman is out and Logano's in, who, let's be real, Logano is even a bigger name driver than Alex Bowman, even though Bowman's good. But I think when you get into the round of 8, and this is what we talked about a couple weeks ago, like, okay, 16 get in. You can have a couple guys who can win a race in a flukish fashion, not taking anything away from a Harrison Burton or some super speedway guys that win a race. But I'm telling you, you go to 16, you go to 12, you're still saying, okay, some of these guys that are in the top 12, not necessarily elite drivers, but man, look at this 8, Rick Mast. Kyle Larson, Christopher Bell, Tyler Reddick, William Byron, Ryan Blaney, Denny Hamlin, Chase Elliott, Joey Logano. I mean, we're talking about, I think there's a good chance, tell me if I'm wrong, I think all 8 of those guys could be NASCAR Hall of Famers at some point. I mean, that's how good this final 8 is. It's crazy, the big names.
It is, and it's funny. It's kind of like speedway racing, restrictor plates. You get down to you see all these names all day long running up front, and you get down to the end of the race, and who do you see at the end of the race? A lot of times at super speedways, that same group of guys that are so good at super speedway racing, and it's kind of like what's happened now with the points deal. I mean, in basketball, they're called posers. You ever heard of the word poser? Right?
Oh yeah,
yeah. All right, these guys we've got in these top 8. Man, they're not posers. I mean, they should be there. You know what I mean? And any one of those 8 right now, I couldn't give you flip a nickel. I have no idea. Right? When we get to the final 4, when we get 4 going to Homestead, I'll give you the prediction then of who's going to win the championship. But to me, as I said before, Charlie, to me, the whole exciting part of this deal is getting down to the last 4. Getting the last 4 before we get to Homestead, or by the time we get to Homestead. To me, that's more exciting than the actual Homestead race. Or not Homestead, I'm sorry. Phoenix. I keep saying
all
Homestead.
Good.
When we get to Phoenix, to me, it's a little bit anticlimactic because to me, the championship has been getting to Phoenix with a chance of winning, right? Because the day of Phoenix, it's whoever's got the best setup that day. You got one race, and whoever hits the setup the best is going to be. And it's the last couple of years, it's been Team Penske, right? And so, but yeah, to your point, you couldn't have 8 better ones. I mean, they set themselves up properly.
And I think with the format, a lot of drivers are saying, okay, it's not like back in the day in terms of winning a championship, but I agree with you in terms of getting to now Phoenix. Used to be Homestead, and I'm going to make a basketball analogy because you did. I'll go college basketball. You have a national championship in college basketball, but there's a lot of prestige of making a Final Four in basketball. You know what I'm saying? Yeah. Like when a coach retires, they'll say he had 700 wins, he had 1 national championship, whatever it is. He had 5 conference championships, but he had 6 Final Fours, or he had 8 Final Fours. I used to cover Tom Izzo. Tom Izzo for a while was Mr. Final Four. Like he only has 1. I say only. He only won one national championship back in 2000. But getting to a Final Four and going through 2 weekends of the NCAA tournament is very hard to do. And I'm thinking about it now in the NASCAR realm. I agree with you. Once you get to Phoenix, I mean, look at Christopher Bell. He blew up one of those years, last year or the year before. But getting to Phoenix is very, very impressive. So I feel like maybe we should have that stat for NASCAR, the Final Four. Not just your championships, not just your races won.
Yeah.
How many Final Fours did you get to? Because that's pretty big.
Yeah, and to your point, Charlie, the year my Virginia Cavaliers and Tony Bennett won the national championship. Of course, we're big time Virginia Cavalier basketball fans, right? And we followed those guys, man. We ate, every breath we took was all about getting there. And when they watching it on TV and doing all that, when they got to the Final Four, it's like, my Lord. And even Tony Bennett, as good a coach he is, and he's a very humble guy, by the way, and a good guy, by the way. Even he was like, I remember one quote was like to his team, guys, just relish what you've done, relish where you're at, relish you're in the Final Four, right? I remember he to what you were saying, you're exactly right. Just soak it all in. No matter what happens here when we leave this weekend, soak in what we've done, man, right? And then they went and won the thing. They won it all. So, but yeah, you're exactly right about that. The Final Four, to me, is the big deal. It's the big deal.
How about some other news? This was yesterday. We've talked about Hailie Deegan before, and this was basically coming. You kind of knew this was going to happen. So for now, Hailie Deegan is leaving NASCAR. She's going to the Indy Next Series, and she's racing next year. She did 3 years in trucks. She did 21, 22, 23. She did this past year about half the year or so in Xfinity. Not great success. Hopefully she has more success in open wheel. You saw that with Danica Patrick. Danica Patrick had much more success in open wheel than she did in NASCAR. And also, I remember watching a couple years ago, Hailie Deegan. I know there's some people who think, oh, she can't drive and all that. She drove pretty well in that SRX series when she got an opportunity. It did seem like some of the boys were wrecking her a little bit the last couple years. So what do you think? You think she has a better chance in open wheel?
I do. And I say that because not a competition level, but it's something about, I don't know. Let me just, I base it off Danica Patrick. Okay. Danica did so well there, and she came here and she did well, and not, she wasn't a winner, a perfect winner, and she went on down the road. But, Danica really made her name in the IndyCar world and brought it to the Cup side, the NASCAR world. Hailie was trying to do it in the NASCAR side, having trouble after trouble after trouble. If she can go to the IndyCar world and make a name for herself, kind of like Danica did, man, I'm all for it. I'm 100% behind her on doing all that. It's, I've been 100% behind her trying to make it no matter what she does, because, cool story, cool girl, cool person, But here's the deal, Charlie. Here's the deal, man. If you're a race car driver, dude, and I've had this conversation with some dudes, right? You're like a tree trunk, right? A tree with the branches. All right, listen to me now. Follow me here a little bit, dude. You're a tree trunk, and you got these branches. You're the tree. You're the trunk. Well, the trunk is you're a race car driver, right? The branches go off. I'm a race car driver that happens to be a woman. I'm a race car driver that happens to have been born into a rich family. I'm a race car driver that happens to be Black or African American, right? I'm a race car driver, whatever. The core is you're a race car driver. If you establish that and you do that properly, the branches is kind of what makes your name, famous, right? But you've got to be able to do the central core part properly. And Danica was doing that in IndyCar. When she came to NASCAR, she was a woman that happened to be a race car driver, right? And I think from that standpoint, it hurt her, right? It didn't work. If that makes any sense to you, what I'm saying, you've got to be at the core a race car driver first, and everything else happens. With Hailie Deegan, they promote her as the girl and the woman and her daddy and her all the sports and all the stuff that family did and does, right? And that's kind of how they promote her. But she has to be at core a race car driver first. If she can do that and maybe get back to that in the IndyCar world, then she becomes a big name like Danica, right? And I'm hoping that's what happens to the girl. I really do.
And you mentioned her dad, Brian Deegan. He was on Kenny Conversation, and he brought this up, and he did it in a matter of fact way. He wasn't. I mean, he was complaining, but it wasn't like he was just bitching and whining to NASCAR. He was saying, "Look, I mean, he had seen so many people take out Hailie on the track the last couple of years, and this was earlier this year. So he was talking mostly about the Truck Series, and I do think this is where it's different going to IndyCar." Because of the nature of the car, obviously in NASCAR, you can do all that beating and banging. And there are some dudes who are like, "Hey, I'm not going to lose to a woman no matter what. Even if we're racing not just for second place, first place, but for 17th place, right?
Yeah.
I'm going to knock her out of the way." And I do think her advantage in IndyCar, probably similarly with Danica Patrick, she also brought this up, is you can't do that beating and banging in IndyCar because you'll wreck everybody's car. So also, I think in terms of driving with respect, there's just more respectful driving in IndyCar, so maybe she has a better shot.
Yeah, and I'll give you a famous AJ Foyt quote one time. Years and years ago, we were somewhere together, and AJ, we were talking about, he was talking about all the guys through the 60s or late 50s, 60s, all his buddies that he watched get killed during the races. And you remember, or you've heard about it anyhow, those guys, if they raced, they were going to kill somebody. That week, somebody's going to get killed in one of those open wheel cars. And as AJ talked about, he's heard drivers talk about, I'm not scared when I get in the race car. And AJ says, well, if that guy says he's not scared of getting in the race car, I don't want to be around him on the racetrack because he's going to die. He said, I have fear when I get in the race car. He said, I don't trust people like that. Well, his point was, what he was saying was he and Mario, some of the guys that came through that made it, they were better than exceptional race car drivers because you could not touch wheels. If you put your right front wheel against another guy's left rear, y'all are both going to go flipping out of the stadium, right? And he's talked about so many of his buddies and people he saw die because car control wasn't there, and they would get into one another with these cars, and you couldn't do that with those cars. Well, it's still true today with Indy cars. You just can't, you can't touch wheel to wheel, or no bumpers to touch, right? You got to learn. You learn how to drive without hitting anybody or rubbing anybody because you're going to wreck, right? And the good news is with IndyCar today, they don't kill them like they did in the 60s, right? But you get yourself taken out of the race, right? And so yeah, that from that standpoint alone, it's probably worth Deegan's efforts to whatever she's had to go through to make this happen. Just from that standpoint, if that's a problem, they feel like it's a problem. She feels like it's a problem. Her dad feels like it's a problem. Then obviously it's a damn problem, right? So what do? You go to a series that you can't get away with that stuff, and maybe it might all click for her. Who knows? We'll see.
It's funny too. We have a whole battle going on in the chat with people debating Kyle Larson. We have some Kyle Larson fans, some other people going after Kyle Larson. So that's all going on in the chat. People can get involved. How about any updates? Any new thoughts on the NASCAR lawsuit? So we learned at the Kenny Wallace YouTube channel. So I think there was some misunderstanding. So basically, the injunction that Front Row and 2311 Racing is trying to get, they actually want to be able to sign the charter agreement. But there was a waiver put in last minute that said, if you sign the charter, you cannot sue NASCAR. So these teams actually want to sign the charter for 2025, but they want to be able to still challenge NASCAR legally for what they're saying is monopolistic practices on antitrust grounds. So I think there was a little misunderstanding there, but any new thoughts on the
no, and that was in there. They brought that up. That was in the 6 o'clock DocuSign 3 hour. Yeah. We got to sign this DocuSign. That was in that document at that point. You sign this document, you got the charter, but you cannot sue us, right? And that was made pretty evident by 2311's attorney that one sentence really messed him up. So basically, no, I don't have anything new. I don't, because I think we'll just have to watch this as it plays out. I mean, the big hit, we took the big hit last week, Charlie. It was all it was talked about. It was all it was brought up, and all the pundits, everybody went on about it. But this week we had so much going on, it really wasn't talked about that much. And I think what's going to happen, what we're going to see is, as this plays out in court, every time we hit, when the judge hears it, it's going to be an onslaught right then. Pockrass and everybody else is going to report on that. We're going to know what's happening. But, I just kind of feel like it's just something we're kind of along for the ride on, and it's above our level what's going to happen. So we hate that it's going on, but the guys, what they're wanting their cake, eat it too. They didn't sign the charter. They want the injunction so they can have the current charter. They can operate next year under the current charter while still suing NASCAR for a better charter agreement. That's what it boils down to. So, and I'm sure probably the judge, I mean, I don't know. They might, the court might not, the court might come back and say, no, we're not going to give it to you. I don't know. But if that's the case, 2311 said they would run without a charter, but I got an idea they probably never thought they would actually have to run without a charter. I don't know. That part to me is what's intriguing about this. If the court would say, no, we're not going to let you run next year with that charter unless you agree to all this, right? So we'll see how that happens.
Right, and they just built this. They just built this beautiful multi-million-dollar brand new building. Also, the timeline you probably saw last week. The timeline was extended a bit because of the hurricanes,
right,
doing all the damage in North Carolina and down there in Daytona, where NASCAR headquarters are. So they'll have a little bit of an extended timeline. I do think, because everybody likes the conspiracy theories. So when the lawsuit was filed, you wondered, okay, are they going to try to go ahead and try to maybe get something on a Tyler Reddick, get something on a Denny Hamlin? And look what happened. I mean, Tyler Reddick runs down the field, and Denny Hamlin, who obviously races for Joe Gibbs, but he's an owner of 2311, he gets in the playoffs, and look who gets knocked out of the playoffs. A Hendrick Motorsports driver, Alex Bowman, where everybody always thinks that Hendrick gets special treatment, right? Oh, Hendrick's in bed with NASCAR. They get all the special treatment. So it's just kind of funny, because going in, people wondered, oh, are they going to try to go after the 2311 guys? And it was a Hendrick driver, kind of going the opposite of what the stereotype always is, that NASCAR goes out of their way to help Hendrick.
Way too much attention, Charlie. There's way too much attention in our sport now. You can't get away with this stuff. Right, we've all heard the rumors and talked about in the past with NASCAR and maybe fudges something, let somebody getting something through inspection or whatnot. We've all heard those rumors. I never personally witnessed it. I never personally firsthand heard from anyone that NASCAR purposely gave these guys a pass or let these guys do. I never did that. But in today's world with the media we have, the scrutiny we have, no, they can't get away with it. It would equate worse if NASCAR was caught doing something like that, dude. I mean, your integrity, everything about the sport's gone. If they were actually proven to be able to actually do that as an organization, right? We've lost our sport. Honestly, we've lost our sport because and NASCAR is the ruling body. They police the sport. That's what they do. They police it. They don't control everything about our sport with these race teams the way an NFL model does. They're there to police the sport. The biggest job they've got is to police this sport every week to keep a level and fair playing field. If you do something like that, then that's in essence the core. That goes against the core of what they're actually there for, is to police everybody. And they just, I read this stuff on social media, man, and you just laugh. I mean, like, good God Almighty! I remember when Earnhardt Jr. was running there. I always talk about Earnhardt Jr. Well, if NASCAR was doing all these things that these people said they were doing, how many championships did Earnhardt Jr. win? Right? I mean, he would be a multi-championship winner. It didn't happen, right? It doesn't happen. This stuff doesn't happen. It makes for good fodder for all of us, but no. It's not there. It's just not there.
And then somebody does bring this up, which I think is interesting. This is DMH 1812 says they do They didn't hit Byron, but they did Bubba. That was talking about the penalty the other day on the chicane, where it did look similar, and a lot of people were wondering why Bubba was penalized and Byron wasn't. Any thoughts on that?
No, I have none. Just a quick call. Just a
Yeah.
quick call in the moment, right? And if you back it up and slow it down enough, yeah, okay, we got it. You made the right call there. Not going
All
there.
right. Rick Mast, what about we got story time. We got what's pissing off Rick Mast. I do want to hear about this honky tonk that people can go to your Twitter, your X account, and see you at the honky tonk. So what else you got here as we wrap up the show?
I tell you what's weird about that. This place called Sidewinders in Roanoke, right? Big old honky tonk. I took my girls there for the 21st birthday 7 years ago or whatever it was. And we go in there, and there's this guy sitting in there. I mean, they have all kinds of security and all these things going on, and the place fills up, and you got the band playing. You got 2 or 3 bars, right? Typical deal, typical honky tonk. But I remember seeing a guy sitting there with security. He had a ball cap on, older fella, right? And that was 7 or 8 years ago. We go back this weekend. We're going in there, and we go in there about 8 o'clock. The damn place is empty, right? And I'm like, well, damn. But I got a whole big group of people with us, so we order something to eat. We're doing our thing. And I noticed we got security everywhere. There's 4 Roanoke City policemen running around in here. There's at least 3 security guys that I could tell. There's a couple more. We got people taking up the money. And I look over there, and there sits that guy with the ball cap on, right? I said, that's the guy that was here 7 years ago. Anyhow, about, I don't know, 9 o'clock, people start filing in. 9:30, 10, there's probably, I don't know, maybe 150 people in here at this point, right? And then I look, and I'm sitting right there at the outside window, and I can look on the street where they set up the metal detector outside and got these ropes lined up. Well, I see people lined up coming into this place. I'm like, and they start piling in. I'm like, 10:30, 11, and all of a sudden you can't move in here. I'm like, and they're lined up for almost a block down the street. All of a sudden they open a door, Charlie. There's an upstairs to this place that was added about 3 years ago. And you go upstairs, right? And they got bars, and it's a DJ, and it's pretty elaborate up there. The light show and the smoke show and all the stuff goes on. But anyhow, here's my point. So I finally keep looking at that guy with the ball cap. I walk over to him, introduce myself. Are you the owner? Yep. I said, when did you put the upper floor in? He said 2 or 3 years ago. And I introduced myself. He says, Rick Mast, you're Rick Mast. I said, yeah. This dude, come to find out, this dude used to be in racing. He worked for Larry Camp, which is a marketing company in NASCAR. He worked the Anheuser-Busch account. He worked the Gargoyle sunglasses account. He worked some stuff. And I went to his office, and he showed me pictures, and he had memorabilia, with Junior and a lot of stuff in his racing days. And I got to look at the pictures, and I'm like, damn, dude, I know you. He done changed. But I remember the pictures from those days. I go down to my basement in my trophy room. I got a picture of, I don't know, some award for being on a pole or something. There's that dude handing me the award for the pole. But it's just, and then we ended up doing a bunch of autographs and doing stuff with him. You know what I mean? But it's just funny, the NASCAR people. It's funny, 6 degrees of separation in NASCAR is just ridiculous, man. It's just ridiculous. I mean, here's a guy in Roanoke, Virginia, owns a very successful bar. And by the way, Zach Top's going to be there for all you Zach Top fans. He's going to be there Thursday night. You can't get in. And this particular bar, Charlie, what I like about it, he always gets these acts in here, and he's got his walls are lined with the acts and their, picture of them and the autographs, right? He gets all these acts that hit rape. They come in and play for him, and then 6 months later they become famous. It's the damnedest thing. I can't even remember all the names. I mean, Scotty McCreary, different people you've seen on Idol and The Voice, and people that's made it now. Morgan Wallen, I don't know, a bunch of different people, right, that come through this place. It's kind of like maybe 50s and 60s at Tootsie's, in Nashville. But anyhow, that was my weekend. It was fun. Did get back before daylight. Not long before daylight, but we did make it before daylight.
Nice. Anything ticking off Rick Mast these days?
Well, the same old thing, the same thing going on in the west with the western mountains of west of North Carolina, Tennessee. Golly, Charlie, we could do a whole deal on that thing, man, a whole day on it. But you see these stories of people putting videos out about what's going on, how much FEMA's helping, how much FEMA's not helping, and all of a sudden I watch this, and now it become political, right? If you're a Democrat, the government's doing all they should be doing. If you're not a Democrat, the government ain't doing crap, right? I'm like, People, just look at the reports that are coming out. Pay attention to what they're telling you. Is it as bad as they're saying it is with the government not helping? No. Is it as good as other people say it is with FEMA? Hell no, it's not. Right? You keep seeing all these reports. They they finally arrested some good old boy yesterday for threatening a FEMA official. Right? And what I do, Charlie, on this whole deal is I go off of people that I know, that are there, right? And you watch these videos, and you can tell some of the videos, right? People maybe embellishing the stories and all, but you could also tell when somebody's being sincere and what's going on. And the people that I talk to, and there's just complete devastation. I mean, dude, it's starting to get cold. It was 34 degrees here at my house tonight, and in the mountains of North Carolina is a lot colder than that last night. And we got people still stranded down there. We still got problems, and that stuff it's just pissing me off here in 2024. Here we are 3 weeks after an event like this or whatever it's been now, and we've still got people that unaccounted for and not tended to. It's bullshit, Charlie. You know that's bullshit as well as that. Everybody knows that's bullshit. Whose fault is it? I don't give a damn whose fault it is. I don't care. I could care less whose fault it is. Is it Biden's and Harris's? I don't know it. I don't care. Was it Bush's fault when Katrina hit New Orleans, and they had trouble? I don't care, right? We've got a government. We've got a military. Get your butts off your butts, or get off your asses in D.C. and get down or wherever you got to do it, and send the military and send people in. Help these folks. Crap, man. This is not political. It's not rocket science. Help the people in need. That's what's pissing me off right now, Charlie.
And it was cool though to see Greg Biffle honored at the race, the Charlotte Roval, and he was the starter, and they gave him a nice standing ovation in the drivers' meeting for everything that he's done. And I know we're gonna get him on Kenny Conversation again, and we were trying to do it last week, and he's doing more interviews. But a big part of the interviews is honestly getting the word out to get people and other companies to help donate all these supplies and all that. So he's still balls to the wall on that. That's just amazing to see. And it is pretty cool. He deserves the Presidential Medal of Freedom. And I think it's neat because Greg Biffle was a damn good NASCAR driver. But I think in the end, he's actually, and he'd probably be more proud of this, he's going to be remembered more for this and things like that than what was also a great racing career.
It's funny. I went out when Biffle was coming in. I don't think I ever had a conversation with him. And then when we did the NASCAR kickoff alumni group deal at Darlington this year, the NASCAR alumni group, the new deal they got going on that I'm a part of. And we did that at Darlington. Well, I spent some time with Greg there, me and I was 2 or 3 drivers, or a bunch of us. But anyhow, got to know Greg a little bit, right? It was almost like, not like kindred spirits, but it was like, okay, Biffle's one of the dudes that Rick Mast would be big-time buddies with had he come through in the 90s racing with me, right? Or if we was racing together, he's one of those guys. I'm like, all right, I love the Biff. So this deal that he's doing up there, and again, what he did was pretty good, but the awareness that he brought, Charlie, he brought the awareness to that thing, put all those things together in the beginning with the helicopters and all that. That was a big-time deal. But after meeting the Biff, I'm like, okay, this is not surprising to me for him to pull this off.
I'll tell you what, let's end on that note. This has been a hell of a show, Rick Mast, in terms of our live shows. Best live show by far. Tons to talk about. We had, I think, 500 people watching at one point.
Ooh,
look at this.
Well, thank you, folks.
Yeah. In the last hour.
And how about Kenny Wallace?
3,800.
How about Kenny Wallace and Dirty Mo Media? What is how about all this, man? Hey, folks, this thing's going big time, right? It's going big time with the Kenny Wallace show. Dirty Mo Media. That's
right.
Charlie, my boy Charlie. He's got to be working harder and doing more. So I'm really excited to watch all this happening. For my little part on this deal, I really, really, really love watching you guys doing this thing and making it happen. It's so friggin' cool, dude.
Well, thank you. And you're a big part of it. And I think there was also some confusion on what's happening there. So we're not changing anything. We're going to still do all the content on YouTube, and Rick Mast still going to be here. And we're just adding a show basically, which they haven't named the show yet, but it's going to be Kenny Wallace, Ken Schrader. I guess the only difference is they're going to create a new podcast platform. So that show and the Kenny Conversation, we have to determine which shows are going to be on which podcasts platform. So that's still all in the works, but nothing really is changing. We're just going to do more and better stuff. And Rick's still here and I'm still here, and we're adding Ken Schrader, and we're linking up with the best company that does this, Dirty Mo Media. So it's all good.
Yeah, I'm excited. I'm excited for all this. I really am. Good, because you know why, Charlie? Very simple, man. The coolest guys. You got the coolest guys. Oh, we got the coolest guys on this deal. It don't get any cooler than Schrader and Kenny and Rick Mast. It just don't get any cooler, dude. And Charlie. Don't forget.
There we
Charlie.
go. I love it. I love it. There's the perfect way to end on. So thanks, everybody. Hey, if you're watching right now and you haven't subscribed yet, please hit that subscribe button. It helps out. Hit that like button. And we'll be back next week after Vegas. This was a good one, Rick. Appreciate it, man. We'll see you.
Toodaloo, guys.
All right. End stream. There we go. End stream.